The Rings of Power, as we're all well aware at this point, was terrible. An absolute dumpster fire from start to finish. And at this point, I shouldn't even have to point out how bad the acting was, the writing, the dialogue, the characters. There was no redeeming qualities whatsoever in this entire 8-episode series that was over an hour an episode. There was nothing there of quality. Nothing at all. So really, I shouldn't have to point this out anymore. All I should have to do is just say The Rings of Power. And most people's thought should go straight to, oh, what, you mean that absolute shite that was delivered to us? Just absolutely atrocious. Well, the showrunners, they have different thoughts on it. They have a different view on it. They are that deluded. They seem to think that what they've written, what shit they've just flung together at first draft quite clearly, is somehow this masterful, amazing piece of art. Shakespearean, as I've seen them once or twice say it before. Because we now have a new article where they explain all of this to Vanity Fair about all the groundwork they put in for the likes of Sauron, the Stranger, and a few other things that we're going to get to. It may take a bit of time. I may be a bit forgetful on some of the details because I'm not watching this shit again. I already spent 2 hours, maybe closer to 4, on every episode. I had to watch it twice on every episode. Not interested in watching the first season again. When the time comes for season 2, I'd rather just go and watch my own reviews. That would be a lot more entertaining than whatever, going back to watch season 1 of this shit. But as they say, the Rings of Power creators reveal their delusions in plain sight. Sauron hid in plain sight. He hid in plain sight. It was just obvious. I think at this point, they didn't expect people to pick up on the fact that Halbrand was Sauron. It was so obvious from the very start. From the very first line of dialogue he said, it was so obvious. So now they're just playing it off as... no, we didn't mean it to... We meant it to be obvious. It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't. It's just because you started to see people picking up so easily because you show shit at writing that Halbrand was quite clearly Sauron. So we're going to go through some of this, see what they have to say. But J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay explore all the hidden clues. So hidden, so well hidden. From Amazon's Lord of the Rings. It's not Lord of the Rings. They just use that name just to attract people to watch it, really. That is all it was about. But let's see what the article says. As I say, we're going to be here for a while, so you might as well strap in. But Vanity Fair start off with, who is Sauron? Where is Sauron? Is that person Sauron? Those were the prevailing questions. They weren't really questions, were they? If we spotted Halbrand and go, oh, that's Sauron. I don't know how people didn't pick... The only reason you couldn't pick up on it would have been if you'd never seen or read Lord of the Rings. Or if you've never watched a show before, I don't know. And in the final episode, the guessing game was finally put to rest. Yeah, we were all guessing. Again, the information was already out there. And even without knowing the information beforehand, watching the show, again, it was so obvious. So obvious. Of course, the mainstream media didn't fucking get it, did they? But Halbrand, the castaway who saved Galadriel and presented himself... No, he didn't present himself as a pauper descended from kings. Galadriel said, you're the king. Sauron said, no, I took that sigil. I took that sigil off a dead man. And Galadriel said, no, you're the king. So, no, he didn't present himself as anything. He was just a guy that wanted to stay on Numenor. But Galadriel was like, no, you're the king. You're going to come back with me so I can use you. I'm going to use you to get Queen Miriel to go off to war with me. And what we're going to do, we're going to take about 300 men on tiny little ships. So, again, Vanity Fair, clearly they're watching something else. Was really the fair form of tyrannical sorcerer himself. Not only did he rescue her in the first episode, but he also credits her in the finale with saving him, saying her belief in his power sustained him at a time, and when he thought he was lost. Of course, that was when the Elven warrior thought he was a deposed king. Well, no, she was adamant he was a king, without even searching for any records or anything on the likes of Numenor. Instead, she waited till he'd started working on the rings, and then she went, I'm going to find out if he's Sauron or not. So it just came out of nowhere. But the showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay spoke with Vanity Fair to walk through a season's worth of clues that reveal Halbrand was never actually hiding who he was. So they're trying to play it off as, no, we were actually being very... No. Virtually everything he said and did had a dual meaning that hinted at his actual identity, if you were watching closely. Because they wanted it to come across smart. So when people went back and somehow watched the entire season again, don't know why you would, that they would go, oh, look, it was all there before. That's what the attempt was. But it was obvious he was Sauron from the start. They didn't hide it very well. They did want to. But again, they're just going to try and play it off as, no, it didn't really matter if you figured it out or not. No, it did. They didn't want you to know. So they say, who in the cast knew the truth about Sauron's identity? I'm guessing Charlie Vickers probably knew, since he's playing him. But did you keep it a secret from the rest of the cast? It was very, very closely guarded. He didn't even know until maybe through episode 2 or early episode 3. Now, when it comes to having actors, it's best to let them know what the fuck they're doing. Otherwise, it's not going to come across as compelling, because he doesn't know what he's playing. So, I don't know why they would just... No, we need to just tell Charlie Vickers to keep it a secret. But you just let him know who he's playing. So that was just a dumb idea. So Vanity Fair say, I had my suspicions all along, but there's a scene in the finale when Halbrand tells Galadriel, you believed in me when no one else did. It's right before she figures out that he is actually Sauron, but it clearly foreshadows that, since she was alone in believing Sauron was still a threat. Was there a lot of that threaded throughout the show? So Payne says, yes, in his very first shot, he's looking over his shoulder with one eye, and in episode 2 he says, the tides of fate are flowing, yours may be heading out. That's the line that Galadriel says to Frodo when the ring comes into her orbit, because of course you had to rip off lines from other things to make it seem like it's good or something. She's repeating the first thing he ever said to her. She asks on the raft what kind of man would leave his companions to die just after she left them to die when she swam off away from them. He says, the kind of man that knows how to survive. McKay says, oh, it gets crazier than that. In his second line, he says, looks can be deceiving. And right there, it's fucking obvious. So this, oh, we're hiding Sauron's identity. Who is Sauron? It's pointless. Pointless if you're going to have him stay in lines where he might as well just be doing that with his fucking moustache. Might as well have just been doing that, saying, looks can be deceiving. So that was pointless. McKay, then later in Numenor, somebody asks him, what's your name? And he says, that depends. And they say, it depends on what? He says, how close we are. We tried to set it up where every single line would be true to a certain extent, no matter who he is. And then you watch him beat the crap out of those guys in Numenor and break the guy's hand in a really disturbing way. You're like, oh my gosh, is he just a good fighter? Or is there something a little superhuman about... No, there wasn't anything superhuman about punching someone. I don't know where you're getting that idea from, or if anyone had that idea that, oh, what you just done, that was superhuman, to punch someone. Right. Then when Galadriel and Halbrand / Sauron have a heart-to-heart in episode 5, she bares her soul and says, I can't stop fighting. Yeah, that was the hilarious line where Halbrand asks Galadriel, why can't you stop fighting? She says, because I can't stop fighting. So essentially, because. That was a response. That was the response that the writers came up with. And my friends couldn't distinguish me from the evil I was fighting. And Sauron killed my brother. And he says, I'm sorry about your brother. He's the guy who effectively killed her brother. So is there a real pathos that's happening there where he is genuinely apologizing? Is he messing with her? We designed every moment so you can be, is it a thing he's saying because it's true, or is he playing a role to manipulate her? So they really just think they're geniuses. Geniuses. These two guys couldn't get a script off the ground for 10 years. Couldn't get a script off the ground for 10 years. They can't figure out that, yeah, maybe we're not that smart. Can't figure that out. In the 4th episode, she asks him for advice, and he says basically, the way you beat your enemies is to figure out what they need and figure out how to give it to them. Help them master their fears, and then you can master them. Again, another obvious line that, oh, Sauron, you mean like the rings? Where he gives them, the elves, the dwarves, rings, so then he has the master ring so he can control them. Again, obvious. So obvious, but no, it was meant to be obvious. And that's exactly what he's doing to her the entire season. You know, I'd argue different. Seemed to me like Galadriel was just, again, manipulating Halbrand into doing what she wanted. He just wanted to stay on Numenor. He went against this entire thing the entire time. He said, no, I don't want to leave Numenor. I want to stay here and create a new life for myself. But she was like, nah, you're doing what I want. So this idea that he was using her, not really. Maybe what he's going to do to everybody over the following seasons, which you've now pissed up the wall, because you're now going to have it. So Galadriel knows that Halbrand is Sauron. She knows he wants them to make the rings, so she says, let's make the rings. Let's do what the evil man says. The only difference is we'll make a 3rd ring, because that somehow balances it out. I don't really know where she got that from. So now in future seasons, because the other, you know, the dwarves and men are supposed to also make rings, well, Galadriel can just say, if anyone comes knocking about making some rings, that is Sauron. If she doesn't do that, then that makes her look like a twat. So that's the way they've kind of messed it up already. Because now it's going to be pretty impossible for the other races to make rings. Unless they really are that stupid. And I'm not going to be surprised if they are. Because in the 1st season, every person in it was stupid. So that's probably going to be the case. But it doesn't work now. Because Galadriel can just say, yeah, don't trust a guy that comes trying to make you make some rings. So it no longer works. In the final episode, we see the creation of the 3 rings Sauron will later use to try and control the elves. Doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work anymore. They're making them out of mithril. Another dumb decision that what we're going to do is we're going to make the mithril, the light armor that Frodo wore, we're going to turn that into the Cimmerils. We're going to turn that into something that saves the elves. And using the most powerful forge ever built. But again, well, they wasted time on this as well. They spent the entire season going, we need all this mithril to save the elves. Then in the finale, oh no, we only need this little tiny bit. That's going to save all the fucking elves. By just having this tiny bit of mithril. Even though they just wasted 7 episodes on going, we need all the mithril we can get our hands on. But no, they just needed that one little bit. They were sorted. And using the most powerful forge ever built, but it keeps backfiring. Halbrand Sauron proposes they stop trying to force the elements together and instead let them mingle and draw together on their own. Is this a metaphor for what he's doing to the various societies and tribes in Middle-earth? Well, he's not going to be doing it anymore, is he? Because they all know that a man wants to make rings, and that man is Sauron. Payne says it's a moment he's genuinely learning something as a character. I don't know where you're getting this from. I don't think he was just keeping that in his back pocket and tossing it on the table now. He's been trying to conquer and force people forever. But being with the elves and watching how they do things and watching what's effective, he sees another path and offers that up. Then that becomes the key that unlocks the entire thing. I would go further, and here's where I think we can tip our hats to Jennifer Hutchison, another person on the show who is delusional about what she's written. And by the way, Jennifer Hutchison worked on Breaking Bad, wrote some good episodes, so it shows you, you know, how much better, you know, Vince Gilligan is clearly an actual showrunner. He's actually in there controlling people, saying, no, don't do this, that doesn't make sense. Whereas in the Rings of Power, Jennifer Hutchison has wrote some shite, and that's clearly on the showrunners, who wrote quite a bit of this episode. The title of the episode is Alloyed. It's just a weird name for an episode. And there's a rich metaphor there of things that don't belong together being coaxed together and complementing one another and balancing one another. And the way they did that is they had the master blacksmith, I'm forgetting his name now, didn't have an impact on me, that's why. Keller Brimbor, the master of blacks, he needed some random guy to tell him, what if you do this and put these together? Never thought of it, even though Keller Brimbor is this master blacksmith that's been doing it for thousands of years, or hundreds, dunno. But that's how he figured it out. Couldn't figure it out without that. If you and me, and that's very much what's going on emotionally with Galadriel and Sauron. That's his pitch. If you and me do this together, you'll balance my dark side, and I'll give you that the power that nobody wants to give you. So basically, Sauron wanted to marry her, he wanted to date her, and then when she declined, he went all incel on her. But that's what they made Sauron into, an incel. Because he's now gonna doom all men to death, or, you know, whatever species, because I got rejected by Galadriel. That's what they decided to do with Sauron. It is 2022 after all. You know, they do that quite a lot now, don't they? Where we're just going to make characters incels now. And that's what's happening with the rings. Even the Mithril itself, we're saying, is a certain kind of alloy, because we tell this potentially apocryphal backstory about it. Whether people want to treat it as canon, well, it's not canon, is it? Clearly not canon. It's this struggle between good and evil that was fused together in a moment of lightning. So even Mithril has this sort of duality to it as well. So they go on about Mithril for a bit. I don't think they've got much here about it, to be honest. But let's see what they say anyway. Definitely, especially when you're... So, yeah, it's basically about... It gave you permission to invent a little bit. Especially when you're playing with such primordial elements of canon, like the Cimmerils, Mithril, the Balrog. You want to make sure that you're giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room, because people have obviously strong feelings canonically. We wanted to make sure that the rings themselves are invested with this otherworldly kind of power and energy. As they're making it, it's made with a special kind of process, but we wanted to put a little extra spice on top of that and say, does it actually have some kind of light that comes from beyond what mortal or even immortal beings could generate? Rings are the nuclear bomb in Middle-earth. It changes everything. Everyone needs a ring. Everyone wants a ring. Again, you've set it up in a way where everyone's doing what the evil man said to do, because that makes sense. They become the ways that these different cultures are subdued. It creates immortality. Sauron's ring creates the entire mythos. Everything is different from here. So on and so forth. I don't think they got much there to say. They bring up the gold and silver dagger that was Galadriel's brother. I didn't give a shit about. It wasn't really built up in a way where this dagger means everything to her. It was just in the last episode, she looks at a dagger like it means something to her. But they never, from what I remember, I don't really see them showing a lot of that. They never made it abundantly clear that, oh, this means, because she would just, she just had it. It didn't really come up in conversation. There's an emotional grounding we're looking forward to. Galadriel's brother's dagger is the symbol of her arc in Season 1. It didn't have an arc. What arc did Galadriel have? She was a bitch at the start. She was a bitch at the end. Don't really see an arc. The small piece of mithril they get is Elrond's journey. That's his journey to get a tiny bit of mithril. Where he just transported from here to there just at will. There wasn't really a journey involved. But they had the whole season based on, we need loads of mithril. Then by the end, it's like, nah, we just need a tiny little bit of it. and that's going to save the elves somehow. And a symbol of his friendship. No, they're not friends. They're not. Durin and Durin tries to be friends with Elrond. Elrond constantly betrays him, tells him lies to him constantly. Says, "Oh, I came to Khazad-dûm to seek your friendship." It's like, no, you didn't. You went there with a proposal. You went there to get something off him. But yet, Elrond constantly believes this lie that he's there to be friends. It's like, no, he's not. That's not what you're there for. And then we all know about the betrayal that happened, but the showrunners didn't realise that's what happened. Where Elrond told Durin, "I will not tell a soul," and then he tells someone straight away, even though Durin said not to. So that was all bollocks. They don't have a friendship. Elrond is just up his own arse. So we're trying to invest it with as much magic as possible in an emotional way. In a way that feels like those rings come from something. Did the melting of her brother's dagger have some symbolism too? She's aware now you're basically putting words in their mouth. She's aware now who Halbrand is and knows his role in the creation of these rings. Yeah, and again, she went, we're still going to do it. We're still going to make the rings, though. Even though, again, she should have found out that Halbrand was Sauron after the rings had been made. Or not even that. Well, because I believe in the actual canon, they don't start off with the elves. The elves don't have the rings first. So they should have done it in a way where word can't get about that there's a man wanting rings made, and he's evil. There was no. It felt very emotional to us and felt like a fulfillment of her letting go. Her putting up her sword. She's not, though, is she? She's not putting up her sword. It's been the weapon she's used at every turn. She put it to Adar's throat. She put it to Sauron's throat once he's been unmasked. So it's certainly rich with meaning for her as a character. Because she had a lot of character. She was very likeable. Very likeable person. Wasn't narcissistic in the slightest. The next step of her journey now will be confronting the ramifications of everything she did while she was carrying it. If you look at the dagger, it has 2 trees of Valinor or some stuff like that. I don't really know why you're bringing up any of this stuff, to be honest. So that's the symbol of her childhood. Was it? She didn't get it when she was a child, though. She didn't get that. She didn't get the dagger till her brother died. She didn't get it in her childhood. Melting it is this loss of primordial innocence. It's just a dagger. Surrendering that as part of what needs to happen in order to preserve the elven race. She's letting go of the last remnant of her childhood in order to move forward. So that gets us done with the Lion, the Bitch, and the Wardrobe, or whatever it's called. So now we're on the 3 Witches, where they ripped this off of Peter Jackson. That was all it was. There's no thought in it. It's just member berries. Just nostalgia bait. It's just to go, you like this thing, well, we're doing it here, so you must like this as well. That's all it was. But let's see what they say about it. I wanted to ask you about the 3 witches who are hunting for Sauron, and they dissipate. I don't think they are killed. Well, no, they're clearly dead. We see them illuminated as skeletal figures, one with a crown, and they look very much like the ring wraiths to me. Am I reading that the right way? Yes, you are. Look, they have, you got the crown here. You got the crown, so it's the same thing. It's just member berries. There's a reason for that. It's because J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay are underlings, little underlings of Jar Jar Abrams, and that is what he does. We've seen it with Force Awakens, all just member berries throughout. So that's why they do the same shit. Do the same shit as Jar Jar Abrams. So Payne says, I think what you're reading is there are glimpses into the unseen world where... No, there's nothing to it. There's just, you wanted member berries in the show to trick people into thinking the show was good. That's what it was. There was nothing else for it. There's no reason behind it. It's just, we wanted some member berries. There are glimpses into the unseen world where the true form of something is revealed. You're seeing what is underneath the form that they've been presenting. Were they defeated or were they just temporarily vanquished? Just get rid of them. I don't want to see them again. I don't want to see that weird woman walking funny. Were they defeated? So whatever. I think that's a story point that people can be thinking about. Not really, because it's just member berries. That's all it is. That was the only thought behind it. Just use something that people liked out of something else. That's all. That's all the thought that went into it. It reminded me of the Peter Jackson films when Frodo puts on the One Ring. Yeah, we all know that scene. That's him seeing into the unseen world. The ring takes you into that place where you can see the true form of things. We're riffing on the visual language of that. They add visual language, guys. But also we like the idea that there are different forms of magic in Tolkien. The visual storytelling, hopefully, suggests that these witches are lesser conjurers than one of the wizards would be, and are bested here. But they escape in another form. Their true appearance in the world of the... It doesn't even make sense anyway. It makes no fucking sense why this one has a crown. Because it isn't the actual, the men. It's not the kings. So that why she has a crown on makes no sense, because she's not one of the ring wraiths. She's not one of the 9 men. She's not the Witch King of Angmar. So her having that crown makes no sense whatsoever. Doesn't make any sense. That's because it's all just for member berries. That's why. While the visual language is a little similar to the Nazgul, we're also thinking about Macbeth. Stop it. Just stop it. Just stop bringing up... They keep bringing up things like Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth. You ain't Shakespeare. You're Shitespeare. That's just what they are. But they keep bringing up like the likes of Macbeth. Stop it. Stop comparing what you're doing to stuff that is well done. Because it makes you look worse. But that's what they've been doing throughout the whole thing. It's Shakespearean. It's not. It's not. The dialogue is dog shit. Some of the worst... It's probably the worst dialogue, at least since I've been reviewing things, the worst dialogue I've seen. So cringe. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Even in this show, they didn't even know what words meant. I think I pointed out in my review the line we get from definitely not Gandalf, where he says, going on a journey is when you do it on your own. Going on an adventure is when you do it with people. It's like, no, that's not what Again, they didn't pick up on the fact that the Hobbit, an unexpected journey, who does he go on that journey with? A load of people. So there was constantly shit like that it's like, you clearly don't know what words mean. Where you're going, an adventure is when you go with people. A journey is when you go on your own. No, it's not. So where were we? And we're thinking about old crones and the 3 witches and just trying to come up with something strange and weird. So you didn't really put much thought into it. You just thought, we just want something strange and weird. We know they come from Rune, and we know there are magic cults in Rune, which is one of the things Tolkien writes about. So maybe there's a slightly different kind of magic, and we can peel back the layers in future seasons. Which is not going to last till season 5. Not going to happen. I don't see any way this series getting to season 5. I reckon season 3 is as far as it's going to go. After that, if shit... again, it's already over. There's no fixing or repairing the damage that has already been done in the first season. But that's what they think's going to happen. Even if the rumours are true that these showrunners have been demoted to the writer's room, which just get rid of them completely. I think even if you get a good showrunner in, good writers in, it's not going to save the show. It's already over. As soon as you start the first season and it's absolute trash, trying to build on the foundation of that, well, you have to just contradict everything. And that just makes it even worse. But now we're on to the stranger, the definitely not Gandalf, but again, more member berries. You don't explicitly name the stranger. Part of that, I think, is because they can't. They're not going to call him Gandalf, but you're supposed to think he is. But I feel like you give us all the information we need to know who he is. His final line in Season 1 is always follow your nose, member berries. Remember Gandalf said that. That's all it is. Which is a famous Gandalf line. To me, that felt like your way of saying, yes, this is Gandalf, was without saying, hi, I'm Gandalf. Like, I don't think they're allowed to say that. I don't think they're actually allowed to name him Gandalf, but you're just supposed to go, oh, he's Gandalf. It's like, why else would you have him say a line that Gandalf said? But McKay says he and Nori are going east. We know that the Blue Wizards go east. We know that, but you're not following fucking canon anyway, so it makes no difference where the Blue Wizards went, does it? Again, they just pick and choose when they want to bring up canon. They just pick whenever it's convenient. So this idea, well, Tolkien said the Blue Wizards go. It doesn't matter. You haven't followed Tolkien, so I don't know why you're bringing this up. We know that Saruman has spent real time in the East. Certainly, he says some things and does some things that feel very Gandalfy. Because again, we got to get you on the member berries. We got to get all the stupid people by just going, oh look. They had him say, always follow your nose like Gandalf did in Peter Jackson trilogy. So therefore, brilliant. This is a journey of discovery, and a name has not been a part of that yet. But if it feels by the end of the season, one like he's a Tolkienian wizard developing a Tolkienian relationship with a halfling that is akin to Gandalf and Frodo, that is because it is member berries. That's all it is. It's just nostalgia bait. There's nothing else to it. It's just, we need to send a female version of Frodo off with a wizard to try and attempt to replicate in the worst way possible Frodo and Gandalf going on an adventure. That's all it was. That was the idea behind it. Couldn't come up with anything on their own. They just had to rip off other things. And just have people, again, go, well, there's member berries, there's Easter eggs, there's whatever bullshit you want to talk about. So that's really the only thought that went into it. We need a wizard and a hobbit going on a journey. That was the only thought that went into it. Because again, these are people from Bad Robot. That is what they do. Just follow the Jar Jar Abrams thing that he does. Is we just need to make people think about the thing they actually like. That's really the only thought that went into it. I think we'd be very delighted. Is that fair to say, JD? Absolutely. And the name, whatever it ends up being, will present itself as in time in which it feels like the wizard has earned it. But it's not a mystery so much as it's a journey of self-discovery. Because they can't just say, well, we can't call him Gandalf, but he's definitely Gandalf. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Even if they call him other things, it's like he's still supposed to look like Gandalf. That's it. We're not saying anything more. We've talked so much about the creative element and the storytelling and the narrative. They use all these words on like this show. Creative. Don't think so. Storytelling, nah. Narrative, nah. I don't know why you're throwing these words in it. Didn't have any of that. But there's a lot of attention on this show. It's a big show. It's an important show for Amazon. What do you mean? McKay asks, because he's not very bright. Now that you have viewer data from a complete season, how do you track success? Again, never going to know these numbers. Pointless bringing it up. They're never going to tell us because it's probably abysmal. The only information they put out was, oh, the first episode had 25 million samples. After that, didn't hear a thing. Didn't hear a thing because it wasn't any good. If it was good, they would be releasing those numbers. That is what would be happening, but they're never going to do that. And even from this show being a success, the only way it's a success is if it brings in subscriptions. That's it. The people that are already there, that's not bringing in success. Amazon need people to sign up for Amazon Prime. And I don't see that happening. I do not see that happening with the Rings of Power. Are you seeing ratings? Are you looking at reactions online? We know they're looking at reactions online because what they said about the reactions online is, oh, they're just patently evil because they criticize our dog shit writing. So they're definitely paying attention to that. What were you able to learn from audience reaction that you found useful? Again, not going to pay any attention to what the audience says. Just going to double down on what they've done. Payne says there's a lot of ways to answer that question. I'd say you would probably have to ask Amazon what success looked like. Well, again, it means subscriptions. That is the only way it's successful. If it's just people watching it that already subscribe to Amazon Prime, then that isn't success. They actually have to gain subscriptions. That's you know how it works. They have a very complex way. Again, no, it's just bringing in subscriptions. It's not that complex. How viewership impacts the platform and what their goals are, and all those things. For us, as you're not seriously going to call yourself a storyteller. These people are they're just good for comedy, aren't they? They just call themselves things that don't apply. You never told a story. You wasted 8 hours of doing nothing. It was only at like the end, like the last couple of minutes of the episodes, or in the last episode, that they actually said, right now, throw a bunch of information at them. They didn't actually have it, you know, weaved through the story. It was just, we can't, you know, if we actually try and do something, people are going to laugh at us. But again, all they had to do was write some dialogue, and it was a disaster. Success means people engaging with the material in a way that impacts them. We've received notes from people that say, hey, I got together and watched this with my family. So they're just making a person up now. That's what they're doing. They're just making someone up. Well, someone actually told me this. I got together and watched this with my family, and we haven't had a reason to get together for a while. You got together over shitty Rings of Power. Amazing. But this brought us together on Friday night. Why? Again, it's just a made-up person. We were all thinking about it for hours afterwards. So, you know, that goes for me as well. I was thinking, how do you royally fuck this up as much as they did? So, you know, in the same boat there. It's a thing that brings people together. Did look like it. Whether it's families or friends or group, well, to be honest, it did bring people together, just roasting the shit out of this show, so I guess it did. Who like Tolkien. Again, the people who like Tolkien are not in the show, just because of the complete disregard and disrespect of the canon. So those people, they are not fans of your show. People with any sort of objectivity or something like that can tell how shit the show is. It's not that hard. Or who like fantasy. You want a good fantasy show that came out this year, watch House of the Dragon. That's actually good. You actually care about the characters. Whereas in this, doesn't have that. Doesn't have that at all. Or just like TV in general. There were moments people found very emotional that moved them in some way. Not actually paying attention to how the shit doesn't make sense. It's just, here's an emotional bit of music. Here's a character with a tear in her eye. Therefore, you should feel something for that character, and then you can say how good the show was, just based on your emotional response. But how you were getting an emotional response, I don't know, because they didn't put any work whatsoever into the characters. Do you know what happened when I watched House of the Dragon? We have to keep bringing up House of the Dragon, because it was fucking good. King Viserys actually brought a tear to my eye, because I cared about him. They had put work into his character, to the point where I know this guy, I know what he's been through, all that sort of stuff. So I actually felt something for him, whereas the Rings of Power didn't have that. So what emotional response you get into it, I don't know. But some people like to pretend that House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power are like the same level. It's like, nah. House of the Dragon effort actually went into it. Or lines they found meaning in. And each of those things was immensely gratifying. I just want to know where all these people are, because I don't see many of them. At least looking at the sort of ratio to the people that know the show shit and people that just go, no, it's good. I think there's more people that were just roasting the show from what I've seen. Did any of that impact your work shaping season 2? So most of us have theorized that there will be an overcorrection. But again, they say we already wrote season 2 before. I don't think they're not gonna, again, if we are to believe the rumors that they are fired, at least from being showrunners, so I don't know, you're not going to be able to do anything for season 2. Because season 2, you know, the actual show needs recasted, needs rewritten, it needs redone from top to bottom. That's the only way of fixing the show. There's no other way. Because, you know, even if you came out with a better season than season 1, you've already pissed everyone off. You've already called them all patently evil. So it's like, no, you've already pissed it up the wall. We're refining the last bits of it now as we're starting to shoot, and again, we're still not seeing it for like 2 years or 2.5 years. But really, the cake was kind of baked before the audience response came in. Again, they don't care about the audience. Certainly, you look at audience responses and you see what characters people love. There ain't no characters. Ain't no characters in the show. They've just got names. Don't really know much about them. Again, when they've actually written the characters in this show, because they don't realize just by little actions that characters make, you end up like showing a character from what you actually you didn't mean him to be. It's like with Elrond. They didn't mean him to be a traitor to his friend, but they did it because they didn't realize, because they're not very smart. So that's the only, they did unintentional character development. That's what they done. They didn't actually develop any characters. I wouldn't say we're overcorrecting for any of it, but we're certainly, you know, hopefully you're off the show. But again, don't make much difference. I'm just looking forward to roasting it again. We're in this for the long game. Maybe not. This show is a life project for us. Again, it's not going to reach season 5. There's no way you can pump that much money into it. Basically, if it does go to season 5, you're going to see gradually the production value is going to go down, down, and down. That's probably what's going to happen if they actually want to just double down to actually make 5 seasons. They're just going to not give them as much money, and it's not going to get $1 billion put into it. We are married to it, and the bar couldn't possibly be higher for what we want to achieve. Our blood, sweat, and tears, it was all first draft. It's so easy to tell. It's like most stuff now, you can tell when it's first draft. You can tell. So, blood, sweat, and tears, it seems like you didn't put any effort into it whatsoever. It seems like you just wrote a script, right, that will do, on to the next episode, that will do, on to the next, and you just did that for the whole time. We want this thing to be delightful and emotional and exciting and thrilling and surprising. You're using all these words that aren't the case. And heartbreaking and romantic and all the things you want from Lord of the Rings. Stop calling it Lord of the Rings. It's not, that's just false advertising. It's got nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Lord of the Rings. No connection whatsoever. So I think in some ways the audience response, we're a year ahead of that, because we saw it a year ago and we were like, here it's really seeming to work, and here it's maybe not working as well. Stop pretending like you know what you're doing. As well as we might have hoped or thought it would. So to the extent there's a course correction, it's just us building on the strengths of the show. It doesn't have any strength. The strengths of our actors. Actors didn't have any strengths. And I think part of that is down to your direction. Because I'm not just going to say, oh, all the actors are terrible, because I ain't seen them in other stuff, so I can't possibly say. But a lot of the time, it's because of the direction they're given. But the acting in this show was awful. Absolutely awful. You had Galadriel saying lines like, there is a tempest in me. It's like, no, shit. The way she delivered lines like that was so terrible. So terrible. But again, these people think what they've written is good. That is why when it comes to season 2, it is not going to improve. They don't think they have to improve. They just think it's already good. But I don't know how you can be this delusional. But these are the people that are working in Hollywood. It's people that don't have a Scooby about what makes something good. They don't know. Don't know what it is. That's just because that is the breed of writers you have in Hollywood now, at least for the most part. That they don't know what good is. Never seen it. They can't figure it out. Which is just hilarious because, again, it gives us stuff to roast, so, you know, whatever. So, to the extent there's a course correction, so, yeah, we've read that. And our designers, again, the designers were fucking hell. Was there a response that surprised you? A little bit, other than the extremes, which can be very loud, whether it's people who are like, love, 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 or people who hate, hate, hate. Again, none of this matters because the show's shit anyway. Doesn't matter if people love it. Doesn't matter if people hate it. The show's still bad. So it makes no difference. And when you sift through the noise, I think we feel that people see the same show we do. Nah. So again, they're just saying, we see the show that is very good. It's not good. You're just coming across as delusional. But fine. It's like, just... You know, what can you do other than let them believe it and let them carry on making trash? Because that is all this when they're just so delusional. They can't accept the reality that they made something that is bad. They can't just look at it and go, yeah, none of this really makes sense, does it? You know, hands up, we made some shit. You know, see if someone actually came out and done that, people would respect them for it. But, you know, we don't have people like that in Hollywood. We have petulant children running about. And the things we love, they love. And the things we know, maybe, oh, we got away with it there. We've got to do better next time. Were things that people called us on. So, yeah, it just seems like they're delusional about what they've actually written. They just bring up stuff that, you know, they say stuff where it's so obvious that's not what your intention was. You're having words being put in your mouth by Vanity Fair. That seems to me like what's happening. But absolutely hilarious. So my only advice really to the showrunners is shut up. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of them talking. So then I basically have an obligation to cover it. That's just what happens. But that's probably going to be... I imagine there can't be any more Rings of Power stuff still. It's got to be coming to an end at some point in some time. Because, yeah, I sometimes you feel like people are sick of Rings of Power now. They're just sick of hearing people talk about it. But, yeah, I imagine there may be a few more articles. But for the most part, it's gone quiet on that side of things. We just had the video I put out last week about them potentially, at least as rumour has it, the showrunners have been sacked. They've been demoted into the writer's room, which still isn't a good place for them to be. They shouldn't have anything to do with writing whatsoever. They should make the coffee. That's the job. You know, if Bezos is listening, that's the job to give them. Just let them get the coffee. Let them think they're doing something, when in actuality they're not. That would be your best course of action. But yeah, they're not. We know they're not going to publicly fire them, because then that is admitting that they fucked up. So we're not going to see that. But the Rings of Power showrunners have revealed how delusional they really are.